Welcome to Corporate Baggage, where we will help you unpack, repack, and lighten the load. We're your hosts, Whitney Siders and Catie Campbell.
For nearly 40 years, we've been coaches, consultants, and leaders inside organizations and supporting global enterprises and Fortune 500 companies to help make those organizations strong and healthy.
If there's a hot topic in the workplace, you better believe we'll be unpacking it here. Topics like return to office, performance reviews, compensation. Nothing is off limits. Like, subscribe, follow us, and drop your baggage in the comments so we can unpack it together and lighten the load.
The only thing that should be in your bag is your paycheck. Welcome back to Corporate Baggage. We are your hosts, Catie Campbell and Whitney Siders, where we help you unpack, repack, and lighten the load on your corporate baggage. And today, oh man, this week we have an episode for you. We are still hitting the return to office topic, and we're going to get into some of the not so nice parts of it.
No. And we've talked about policies, we've talked about leadership, we've talked about all the things that have been always there, but masked by return to office. And the big one now is promotions and exits. And so what happens when you are up for this promotion and all of a sudden you are returned to office and you have a plan, but it's upended by a new policy or a new person? Or what does that look like? What does it mean?
I mean, the wild thing that we're seeing right now, and it's been a slow build, is not just return to office. I mean, post-COVID, 2021, companies that went fully remote and then kind of hybrid and sort of flexible have slowly moved back into the office because, and recalling people back to the office because of all sorts of things that we've talked about. It's usually money driven, it's commercial real estate, it's occupancy. And you know, one of the things that we haven't hit yet is there are cities and towns that were really impacted by workers who did work from home and were no longer using services like dry cleaners and restaurants and even just other kinds of social venues during the time where everyone worked from home. So companies are recalling people. Return to office is not new. But I think what we're seeing now is there are a number of really large companies who are not only asking people to return to office, but they're putting in requirements if people start to refuse. So many people got addicted to the flexible environment, working at home, being more comfortable. For a lot of people, it really suited their work style, it suited their personality style, suited their, sometimes it's just their emotional and physical makeup. It was really an easier way for them to be a part of the workforce, but not have to worry about the commute and the physical part of being in the office and working around other people. They could work around other people from their home, working around their dogs, which, you know, what's not to love? You do that all the time. Mm. But now these companies are deciding to not just require people to be back in the office, but they're saying, if you don't come back, that's fine. But one of two things will happen. You won't get a promotion and you'll be capped at wherever you are. And for some of them, it is, if you don't come back, we are going to exit you. And so, there's lots of situations right now where people were gunning for a promotion. They've been working towards it. They've had goals and metrics and KPIs and they're meeting them. And then all of a sudden a big corporate policy comes up that says, and in order to get that, you're going to have to be back in the office. And here we are.
And in a weird way, that's the best case scenario because it's clear. They say, if you do this, this is what happens. If you don't do this, this is what happens. And then you still have the choice. I think what we're seeing more is this identity crisis, which is what we've seen companies go through with the whole return to office, which is we're work from home, we're return to office, we're hybrid, we're this, we're that. We don't really know what we are. And finally, I think we're seeing a little bit more of a stake in the ground, a little bit. But then still what comes with that is even if we are, let's say we're hybrid or we're remote, well, companies aren't very clear on this is what it takes to get a promotion. It's behind the scenes, upper leadership saying, well, I don't know if this person can get promoted because I'm not able to see what they're doing. Again, back to that visibility, or not understanding if they are hitting those metrics because those aren't clear. So in really the best case scenario, it's what you described, is it's this or that and I have a choice. But I think what we're seeing even more of is that gray space, which is it's not even that clear.
Yeah, okay, wait, but you are painting this, in my opinion, you're painting this in way too positive of a light. And it's not surprising. You're an optimist. You're even more of an optimist than I am, because I'm one too. Okay.
Just kidding. You are.
I am a practical optimist.
Yes.
Something like that. I think you're painting it way too positive of a picture here. Because if I am somebody who was on the precipice of a promotion, and now you're telling me that I won't get that unless I am working in an office 5 days a week on a set schedule or something like that, it doesn't feel like an opportunity for promotion. It feels like a threat.
Sure.
If you tell me that if I don't change and completely upend my family lifestyle that you said last week was totally fine for me to do, and I was a valued employee in that capacity, but now I will no longer be a valued employee and you're going to exit me because I won't comply with your new conditions of working, sounds like a threat. So you're either threatening to keep me static in an organization, which anybody who's a high performer or who desires something bigger in their career, a bigger role, more responsibility, whatever it is, it's a threat to me. And if you are threatening people, because that's what it is, if you don't come back, we're going to fire you. Now you're threatening my livelihood and my ability to feed my family, myself, take care of my responsibilities, which doesn't feel good either. So I get what you're saying, but I'm really, on this particular topic, I'm so bullish on the side of the employees because I feel like it is, I am big company and I am going to wield this power over you. And to be honest, we get it. Like the company has the power. They have the money. We do the work. And that's how the whole exchange happens. We get that. But it doesn't feel like this is a value exchange. Like you value my contribution. I value you by paying you and giving you benefits. Now it feels like I only value you if I can keep you under command and control. And I will threaten you if you don't want to do it my way. That's how like when I see those announcements, and it is like 1 or 2 a week now by these big behemoth companies who are setting the trend for what happens if you don't want to comply with RTO, it just doesn't feel good. It feels like the pendulum swung from the Great Resignation back to, okay, corporate America is in charge and we're in control.
You're going to comply.
Yeah,
it reminds me of
comply. Exactly.
It reminds me of a conversation we've had before, though, around the choice to then do. Sure, I get it. It's the livelihood. It's what you worked for. It's not fair. And are those organizations showing their true colors? And does that align to what you want anymore? And it doesn't mean that you need to back out and go to another organization at the same caliber. We're talking Fortune 500, company to company, which often employees feel like if that fits them, that's where they stay. But maybe if we look at it just from a different angle, back to choice for a second. So yes, all those things unfair. But if we switch our mindset slightly to say, okay, now at least I have information. This company isn't who I thought they were. And now I either have a choice to stay in that environment if I want to comply, right, and get the promotion, or I don't comply and I go somewhere else where they do value me for other things that don't require me to comply to them to being in the office. They value me for my value creation, what I'm bringing to the table, all those things that I wanted to get promoted for. Maybe that's actually a better option. Maybe. Again, I don't think that that's always going to fit for each person, but to me personally, I think that that is a gift. That's something that then allows me to say, actually, this doesn't align with what I want. And we're seeing that a lot more. I'm seeing this a lot more with employees when companies are getting more clear. Let's take RTO out of it for a second. When companies are getting more clear on their vision, their strategy, their values, employees are then able to self-select out. And that ultimately helps employees and organizations because you don't have people that are half in, half out with that engagement piece.
I was laughing because you said something just a second ago around maybe this doesn't seem fair. And I think if I were on the side of the employer, I'd be like, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter. I think the problem with that is most people go into the whole I'm going to work for you contract, whether there is a written contract or not. There's an agreement of what the exchange of service is going to be, right? And that is what most people then base how they operate day to day and how they orient their life around making sure they can fulfill the obligation they said they were going to do. And so I don't know how much fairness comes into play with all of this. And I think that also then further complicates this. I don't think it's okay enough just to say, well, it might not be fair, but, because it wasn't the original contract at all.
It's not nothing. So fair is a big word. And I do believe that nothing is truly, I don't think it's 50-50. Now, you say there's an agreement, you agree to do a job. I don't think it's ever 50-50 in terms of power dynamic. However you want to paint it, it's never 50-50. I don't think so. The corporation, when you're talking Fortune 500 corporation, they're always going to have an upper hand. We can argue that one. And however, the job of the leader and the organization is to help employees feel and operate in a way that takes their voice and they do something about it so that they feel like that the system is fair and just for them. Whether it's exactly what the employee wants or not, if they have a voice in it, there is some fairness that's being enacted there.
So does that mean like when somebody says, okay, I don't want to return to office and therefore I'm going to get fired, is that where you say that they're getting the employee voice?
They're not getting they do have a voice, but they're overriding it at that point. Now they're not what it would look like differently is if there were options. They're giving one-sided options. That's not fairness. That's saying it's either this or that. Mm-hmm. So what fair would look like is, hey, we got input from we want to create a return to office policy. We got input from our employees. Based on this input, it looks like we have this spectrum, which means we created these 3 options for you. You get to choose. Fairness in a lot of ways equals the option to choose. Now saying, we got your input and here's the one option that you have. You either do it or you don't. That's not fairness just because you got the voice of the people. Mm-hmm. Because you're not giving them a choice. You're giving them a choice, but it doesn't feel like it's so binary. It's black and white.
It's so black and white. It's either you're in or you're out. And what I'm concerned about when you have these kinds of policies and structures is, so let's just say that, I know that right now Amazon is going through this big shift. This has been top news everywhere, and it's causing challenges not just from what the perspective we're talking about, but more globally too, because the laws are very different, and protections around people's employment's very different. But once people make the choice of what they're going to do, I'm going to stay in place and I'm not going to get promoted, or I'm going to not go into the office and therefore will be exited, then there's a whole group of people who go, no, I'm opting in. I'll go back in the office. Some people, it's better for them. Some don't really care. Some, it's not a bad commute. Some are willing to sacrifice whatever it takes because they really want to climb the ladder at a particular company, Amazon or otherwise. And that's great. But what do you think that actually does with the people who are left in the organization? Because that's the real impact that I think it's going to take some time to see. But I can't imagine that that's going to drive the kind of engaging, healthy culture, productive kind of workplace that most companies say that they're trying to build.
Well, here's an example of this too, is because what you don't see is the behind the scenes thinking, even after people make the choice. So prime example, someone I know, won't name names, she was asked, I talked about this in an earlier episode, was hired under the pretense it was fully remote job. Large Fortune 500 company across the country, but they have local regional offices. She was hired under the pretense she would never have to go into an office. Fast forward a year into the job, only 1 year into the job, everyone's required to be back in office 3 days a week. That commute for her would be upwards of almost 2 hours, 3 days a week.
That's ridiculous.
Possible, but not possible. Come on. And so she then submitted there was this option to have this submission for an exception, essentially. She did. She got it. It was granted. Now she still goes in once a week. It's fine. Now, what did she say? Now, is she doing that? That is her option. That is her choice. Does that then send signals to other employees, impact morale? Yes. Also, behind the scenes, what is she saying and doing? Looking for another job. Because that's not sustainable. So I'm going to stay until about 2 years, probably another year. Am I fully engaged?
No.
While I'm looking for another job?
No, absolutely not. There's no way she could possibly be.
So whatever the choice or the impact is, there's always a ripple effect. And I think that is where we get into the deep connection, the leadership, the guidance to understand what's truly happening for that person, to have honest conversations, because the impact is significant, seen and unseen.
Yeah, and I think about the promotion angle of it too. When most times in corporate America, so military is very different. And then there are some specific companies where they would require, if you get promoted, you're moving to a different location.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But that is the given in the military. Like nobody puts their foot in and says, I can't do it.
Under industries.
Yeah, for sure. So, but for most companies, when you're thinking about getting promoted, you're thinking about the work that I'm doing on the job, the results I'm getting in my role, the kinds of things I'm producing that are of value to the company. I'm not thinking about, and I'm also going to have to then reduce my ability to have flexibility in my life. I'm not thinking about all those extra things or cutting some of the benefits that I thought that were a benefit of this role or this job. I'm thinking about, what am I doing for the company? And so I worry about some of the companies that say, hey, we're going to cap your promotion potential, because now you've just said to all these people who were your best and brightest people, that contribution doesn't matter, because all that matters is that we can see that your butt is in a seat in our corporate office somewhere. And I don't know how you make peace with that as somebody who's a high performer, as somebody who was really loyal and dedicated to what the company was doing or producing. They were loyal and dedicated to their team. However you want to categorize it, what that is saying to all these people is, your value is not in what you produce. Your value is the fact that I can see you with my own eyeballs and I know that you're here. It is the most counterintuitive and counterproductive measure that I could think of for a company to enact. And they're doing it almost seemingly willy-nilly. It's wild to me.
And that's only the things that are being said and the things that are being seen, observed, like talked about. I think what's not being talked about enough is, and again, we talk a lot here about symptoms and root causes. Like, those are the symptoms. Those are the things that are happening. But what could help that is teaching people to advocate for themselves. Teaching people that if you aren't seen, because what we're saying here is, if you're not being seen, you're not being observed, is doing a good job, it's only based on the results. And even then, that's not enough. Okay, well then how do you advocate for yourself? How do you get your voice at the table that matters when it comes to promotion? I think that's the way that we can actually help people influence that part, because I truly don't believe that you have to be seen in order to be promoted, in order to be known as a high performer. Mm-hmm. That should be based on your results. However, if I'm an executive leader and I never see you, Catie, and you're crushing it, and I'm only looking at your results and not all of the testimonials from your customers, the problems that you solved, the peers that you helped coach, I'm not seeing or hearing any of that. That's not contributing to the case to get you promoted. So then you just look like everyone else that is hitting those numbers. How do you stand out? How do you stand out is, it's not just the humble brag. It's having your leader or someone else, it doesn't have to be your direct leader, an advocate. It's not a mentor. It's an advocate at the table that is your voice in a room that you're not in. That's how you're getting promoted.
I just think that, well, okay, so you're talking about this from
the employee lens.
The employee lens. And I agree with you. And that's actually been, the bigger the company you work for, the harder it is to get visibility anywhere. And that's always, even if we are all in the same building. So that's been a perennial challenge for sure. In fact, my dad and a business partner of his wrote a book about it too. Make yourself indispensable. Shout out Roger Campbell. But they wrote that book for that reason. And but a lot of it was about visibility. It was about how do you do self-promotion without bragging?
Yep.
How do you really elevate what you're doing to the level of people that will take notice because you are creating something of value here? But Whitney, I keep thinking about the season that we're in is a microcosm in even our professional lifespan that goes combined almost 40 years, right? But the season that we're in is going to have a ripple effect that I think that companies have been scratching their heads on of how to get around it, in front of it, and this is going to make it worse. And the situation is loyalty. So it's so rare these days. Even the military struggles with this now because they've changed their infrastructure too. It's very rare to meet somebody who's worked for a company for more than 10 years, 15 years, 20, 30 years, right? It's just not a thing anymore. There are so few industries and so few companies that have pensions and those kinds of guarantees. So there's not an incentive necessary to stay for a long period of time unless a company is amazing at how they compensate and how they reward longevity, and it's also good work, okay? But so companies have been figuring out how do we have loyal employees? How do we keep people committed to what we're doing? How do we have people not come in and steal the state secrets and then leave and go to a competitor? This has been a head scratcher for years and years and years, and psychologists have been studying it for decades, really, to figure out like how do we keep people loyal and committed to the mission or what we're trying to do. So now what we're hearing is we want you to be committed and loyal, but you know what? If you just don't do this one policy, you're dead to me. You're gone.
Right.
Your performance or your promotion doesn't matter to me. So like you're valuable one day and you're not valuable the next day.
I want loyalty from you, but you can't expect it from me.
Right.
It's the one-sided.
It's the one-sided. So when you were talking about fair and equitable, you're right. It's not, there is a power dynamic that it will always exist in organizations. And I've met very few that seem to have it in balance. And so maybe that's not the way it's supposed to be ultimately, but this feels so aggressive
With the promotions.
And the exits that I worry about companies that are forming now. They're just getting off the ground, really cool startups, people who are inventing or creating new things that are also going to fall victim of, I don't know if I want to stay around for 3 to 5 years and figure out if this thing is going to sell. I'm just going to hop to the next thing. And everybody blames millennials and Gen Zs and everybody else, all the rest of the generations that will come. It's like, oh, they're not loyal. They won't do. It's decisions like this that also influence whether or not it's worth it to be loyal to a company. And that's sad because you and I are very values-based, mission-driven kind of people and leaders. We work with leaders to be those types of people. And it's very difficult when now corporations are putting in these policies and structures to basically say, that's not important. Like you should be loyal to me, but we're not going to be loyal to you.
Well, and I think companies aren't thinking about the trade-offs there because like we talked about earlier, I think it's much easier to press that easy button and say, well, they're not complying, so on to the next one, right? Instead of thinking critically, not only, I think conceptually leaders understand it is expensive to hire conceptually, but also what comes along with that. Not only is it expensive to hire, to find the right talent, to onboard that right talent, all of those things, but then what are you losing from that person that might have been there, let's say even 2 to 3 years? You're losing institutional knowledge that, let's be honest, isn't captured. How many times have we talked to people that said, oh, wait, that's just in my head? I can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
All the time. It's
all
scary.
All the time. Scary. And so, issue for another day. But my point being is that what's the trade-off? So it feels easy in the moment to say, on to the next one. We'll just replace this person because we are all indispensable or dispensable. So, but what's the trade-off that you're losing?
Oh, trust. To me, it's the number one thing. I can talk about loyalty till I'm blue in the face. It's not that, it's trust. Then what it means is that every single day I'm going to be opening up my inbox or going in and working with my team and waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because if you're willing to threaten me with, I'm not going to promote you and I'm going to let you basically retire in place, or I'm going to fire you if you don't do what I say, then I'm going to be waiting for what's the next policy. Are you going to roll back? We've heard this when recessions get really tight, that people roll back like 401k matching, or they roll back benefits. They used to have this whole suite of benefits, but now we've redone the benefits package, and what that means is they've contracted it, right? So it's now I'm waiting for something bad to happen, or I'm expecting that, which is not great. It's not great, sort of like, walking into a dark house on Halloween, like you're expecting something to jump out of the closet. And that's exactly what people are worried about. Like the next time we have an all hands meeting, what's going to happen? The next time we're like, oh, there's a company policy coming out, or it's right before quarterly earnings for publicly traded companies.
Right.
It is the time where people get the most skittish in organizations, because that's when new policies, new procedures, new financial constraints are announced.
That.
Correct.
To mask the layoffs, to decrease the numbers. The policies, unfortunately, this has become more commonplace, where the policies are used to get people to leave versus creating the layoffs. And even back to layoffs, it's the I've seen this a lot this year in particular. I don't know what you've seen, but it's around not just one deep layoff, but a continuous cut of layoffs, which is much more, to your point, is when is the next shoe going to drop? Because it's not, oh, this was one drip in the pan. This is like, oh, wait, every single quarter, am I next? And I think that is something that's I've always seen it in terms of annual, but the quarter to quarter, the deep cut after cut, that's new to me.
It is. And people hold their breath every single quarter. They are waiting to get their Slack and email and internet cut off. They'll open up their laptop one day and it's like, it's gone. And I mean, I know of people, and these are senior leaders, executives at some of these companies who will literally open their laptop and hold their breath because they're afraid of, oh gosh, like, okay, the mortgage payment's going to be a little dicey next month.
Well, I think just like the leaders are looking at this and saying, what's the easy button? I think employees are too, because they're saying equally, I have this hill to climb at this current company that's clearly not valuing me, or I can stay at this job and look for another job and jump ship and get a promotion, get a raise. So what am I going to do?
Listen, we named our show Corporate Baggage for a reason. And when I think about how people feel in organizations when the decisions that are coming from on high are like this and it feels punitive, that is the baggage that they're carrying around. So you said something about this earlier that I think is really important, that your friend, is she fully committed and all in on her job? Probably not. She might be doing great work and people think that she is, and she might be kind of playing it up to say, no, we're good. Yeah. Even having to go in and do that stupid commute one day a week is not great, but she's probably looking for something that better fits her lifestyle, because if they're going to already ask her to come back in one day, it's a slippery slope to say, do it more, right? So she's carrying around some semblance of baggage of, this doesn't really work for me. And I think I probably need to find something different. So all these other people who are in these companies, and now we're talking about, when you're talking about Fortune 500 companies, thousands upon thousands of people are waking up and going to work every day and thinking about, should I be looking for another job? Can I say I have a dentist appointment so I can go do this interview? I need to go and network more so I can see what else is out there. I need to call all of my friends and scour LinkedIn for who's hiring and who's doing what. It's the most counterproductive behavior that is easily preventable by better planning, but certainly better policies, so that you've got people focused on what you are paying them to do versus focused on finding somebody else to pay them to do work.
Or just look at them in an office. And that is the baggage that people are then carrying subconsciously. And I think that so I'm thinking about individuals that are experiencing this currently, looking for other jobs. They're going to take that subconscious baggage of, okay, what's the next policy? I'm at this new corporation. I have a new job. I have a promotion. I have a raise. Great. I'm so happy. Now when's the next shoe going to drop? That baggage is something they carry. And we're talking about thousands of people across corporations that we're creating this new generation of disengagement.
Mm-hmm. I worked in an organization that was at the time that I joined, it was super healthy organization, wonderful team, awesome leader, just kind of an ideal setup, right? Everything that you would want in terms of how you were treated, how you were felt, values-driven organization, checks all the boxes. Okay, so 6 months after I joined that organization, my still to one of my closest friends this day, my friend Chris joins the organization. And she came from a very toxic environment. Like, it was abhorrent behavior that the leadership and the company that she came from was demonstrating. And she was beat up, but she's wicked smart, super accomplished, had tons of skills. So she was a great add to the team. And she's also from Jersey. And so she's got a high level of skepticism about anything that seems too good to be true. It's one of the things I love.
Shout out Chris.
Shout out Chris.
Shout out Jersey.
Yeah. Hashtag Jersey rules. So it took her 6 months to finally say, this isn't fake anymore. And I remember having conversations with her about that, like over drinks or over coffee or something like that. Like, this isn't a joke.
Okay.
It's not a show. It's okay.
It's trauma.
And it's okay for her to like fully be herself, that she didn't have to be someone other than who she was, because we hired her for who she was. So then, and that was an organization I think had 100 people at the time. Amplified that across 100,000 people.
Yeah.
And there's all of those other Chris's then that are taking their toxic corporate baggage into healthy workplaces. And then those leaders that are in there are going to have to deal with this. This is a problem that perpetuates into companies that are from unhealthy to healthy. And that's a challenge for leaders in both companies.
And if you can't see it and name it and help people work through it either, that's a problem, and it'll perpetuate, or they'll become leaders and enact what they think is true. I mean, we learn and we do, right? Until we're taught differently. And I think we've all experienced some sort of that experience that you described, right? I know I have, and brought that baggage, and it takes a lot to unwind and to understand, like, okay, I'm okay. It doesn't mean there's going to be other issues, but I'm okay in this environment. Like, it's not going to be the same as last time.
And in these environments, I think it's critical for leaders to really spend time thinking about, okay, given that this is the corporate policy, there are great leaders at all of these companies that are enacting these RTO stipulations. Fine. So the leaders who are there that left holding their bag, they are really needing to think strategically about, what do I need to do to keep these people focused? What do I need to do to keep people engaged? But really, then how do I really rebuild the trust that maybe the company, that the people don't trust the company, but maybe they trust the leader? And really, we still know that even though company policies are terrible sometimes, most people leave managers or leaders. They don't leave the company primarily. And so there's a lot of people who will say, okay, I'll come back to the office and I'll work because I still want to get promoted and I don't want to get fired. So then the leaders that are there that are really then holding the bag, they are the critical pieces of this puzzle to make it so that the companies that are enacting these policies don't have even more counterproductive behaviors pop up.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really good point I want to emphasize, which is not just the person that is leaving or the person that is not getting promoted. It's also everyone around them that's watching. Mm-hmm. Everyone is saying, that's me, or that could be me.
That's right.
And whatever's going to happen to them is going to happen to me. And so you might have someone leave and a huge fallout. So not only looking at what are my individual conversations, but where are my flight risks? Where are the people that I can't lose? What are the conversations that I need to be having? And why? And what does that really mean? Because you want to get ahead of that, because if you're doing it after that person leaves or after that person has a conversation and goes and talks to all of their peers, that's too hard to unwind. You've already passed go at that point.
In a future conversation, we absolutely need to talk about then what the long-term impact of this is, because the reputation of the company and their policies and how they do all of these movements around where people work and how they work and the culture that they're trying to create, it does have a ripple effect when you're trying to then recruit and steal people from another company. Yeah. When you're trying to effectively onboard somebody and really get them to buy into the culture as soon as they, sign on the dotted line kind of thing. And I think we need to, at some point, honor the people who are the recruiters and the talent managers that are bringing people in to say, not just how this is impacting them, but things that they can do to try and help overcome that and quell the churn that's out there now with all of this RTO stuff.
Yeah. The bad news.
Oh, Lord.
You want the bad news?
No.
The bad news is there's no right answer for RTO or how you run your business. The good news is that if you put the human-led leadership, the human-first conversation, the hearing my people, the creating flexibility, adapting to how the workforce is morphing, you will get it right more times than not. Mm-hmm. I didn't say you'll get it right. You'll get it right more times than not, and your people will be happier. If you are trying to enact a policy for the stakeholders, enact a policy for your real estate, enact a policy because it's something that you have to do, you will get it wrong more times than not. So choose your own adventure at that point.
I think at the end of the day, companies need to be thinking about the impact that they're having on the individuals that they employ. And I think the individuals they employ need to be thinking about the fact that because of the relationship they have with these companies, that it's not an equal playing field. And that's okay if you know that going into it. And that doesn't mean that you should be disloyal. It doesn't mean that you should be always looking for a job. But what it does mean is you should be aware and informed and pay attention, as opposed to just saying the company will take care of me. It's all going to be fine. That's just
ask the right questions.
That's right.
Not the right questions, more questions. Get curious. If you're leading from a place of, and when I say leading, that could be as you as a leader, you as an employee. But if you're leading from a place of curiosity, that will get you much further than putting your head down and doing your job, which I often see employees do when they're disenfranchised with what's happening, is they say, well, I don't have control. I can't change it. I can't do anything. I'm just going to put my head down and do this. That's great if that's what you want and that's your end all. That is your end goal. But if you want more for your life, you want more for your if you want more, you need to ask questions or get out. Get out of there.
It sounds so ominous.
Get out of there. Jeez. I mean, hey, you said that I'm an optimist, but I'm also, I think, a realist.
Okay. You're an optimistic realist.
Today, we'll see. We'll see what other topics we get into, which, speaking of, I think this wraps, there's so much to unpack when it comes to RTO, but we're going to put a pin in it for now on RTO.
Yes.
Share your comments, questions you have. We'll revisit them. But up next, we're going to unpack a bigger one, which is work-life balance. Are we saying balance? Work-life balance for now. We're going to unpack what that means next time. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then. Thanks for listening. If you have some corporate baggage you want to unpack or something you took away from the conversation, drop it in the comments.
Find our social links in the description. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share these episodes.